I want to talk about becoming a great staff, and we're going to begin this session by a little Bible study, a little Bible reading. And once again, these are passages you're familiar with and have probably taught. We're just going to look at them through the lens of leadership for just a few minutes. And here's a very familiar story from Mark chapter 10, verse 32. And all the scriptures in your book, and so I'll read this to you, and you can follow along if you want to. Here we go. They were on their way up to Jerusalem. That would be Jesus and his followers, with Jesus leading the way. And the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. And again, he took the 12 aside, and he told them what was going to happen to him. Now, this is interesting. "We're going up to Jerusalem," he said, "and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles." Now, he's giving them details. "Who will mock him and spit on him, flog him and kill him, and 3 days later he will rise." Verse 35. "Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, said, 'Teacher,' they said, 'we want you to do for us whatever we ask.'" Okay, guys, let's back it up a second. Were you not listening? I just explained what's going to happen to me, okay? Let's go. I'm going to be arrested. They're going to spit on me. They're going to flog me. They're going to mock me, and they're going to crucify me. Yeah. But listen, we got a question. Whatever. Would you... And this is pretty amazing little transition. Then, see the verse, the word that hinges us together is then. Like right after he finished that, they're like, okay. Then, "Hey, Jesus, just a little private thing going on here. Would you do whatever we ask you to do?" What? "Yeah, would you do whatever we ask you to do? We're not going to tell you what we're going to ask you to do. We're going to ask you in a minute, but we want you to commit to do whatever we ask you to do before we tell you what it is we're going to ask you to do." This is right after he just told them the most painful, emotionally, if you're a parent, this happens all the time, okay, because you're trying to have a tender moment at the dinner table. You ever do this? We call them life lessons with dad. That's what we call them at our family, okay? You can steal that. Life lessons with dad, and our kids are like, "Oh, okay, it's time for life lessons with dad." And I'm pouring out my heart, and I got a verse and a story from my childhood, and it's a tender moment, and my 15-year-old raises his hand. "Yes, Andrew, may I be excused?" How about, "Wow, good story, Dad, may I be?" So anyway, so Jesus is just this is tender. It's "Oh, yeah, okay." Then they ask, "We want you to do for us a favor." And we're not even going to tell you what the favor is. This is unbelievable. Verse 36, "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. He's so patient, right? They replied, "Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory." I mean, we're real sorry about the death thing and all that, but... I mean, that's tough. That is tough. But when you have that glory thing we've been kind of looking forward to, but by the way, that is why we signed up for this, okay? Because we're thinking you're the Messiah, and we know how that goes. And so when it gets really big, and the lights are bright, and Rome is gone, and all the Pharisees are like, "You were right," when it's the show, is it okay if we're on your left and your right? In other words, we know we can't be as great as you, but would it be all right with you if we're almost as great as you? That's what they're asking. You see, when we read that, we just think, oh, how offensive. Verse 41, when the 10, you got to love this, when the other staff members, when the 10, right? When the 10 heard about this, and you always wonder, how did they hear about it? It's not like they went back. When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. But not because they were offended on Jesus' behalf. "I can't believe you'd ask him that right after he..." No, they're upset because, they're probably thinking the same thing. And these guys are pulling out ahead. And Jesus, he's such a great leader. Jesus, he treats them a little bit like children sometimes, and you got to do that, I guess. Jesus, verse 42, called them together and said, okay. Let's have a little teaching moment here. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them." And they're like, "Yes, we know that. That's how the world works. There are the people in charge, and there are the people that report to the people in charge, and then there are the people that report to the people that report to the people in charge, and then there's all the peons, and then there's the servants, and yeah, that's how the world works. I mean, somebody's in charge, and the people who are in charge tell the people who aren't in charge what to do, and then they pass it down, and that's how the world works. That's how, we know that." Verse 43. In fact, they were thinking, why do you think we're hanging out with you? Because like when you're like really in charge, we want to be the second tier. And in fact, it's, to the two, it looked like, 12 was too big of a second tier. We want to be like the middle managers. We want you to tell us what to tell the other 10 what to do. I mean, we understand how this works. That's why we're here. Verse 43. Now, ready for this? Not so with you. Not so with you. Let me ask you a question. Who's the you in this story? Not so with you. Who's the you? Don't need to read the whole story to you over again. Hey, it's not a trick question. Who's the you? The disciples, right. That's not a trick, okay? Not so with you. This is the 12. And you know who the 12 were? The 12, this is where it gets a little personal for us. The 12 are the future leaders of the church. Yeah. Not so with you. In other words, when you guys are like, you don't even know what a church is yet. We haven't gotten that far in history. But, when I'm gone and this thing explodes, second chapter of Acts, and suddenly you guys are like rock stars in Jerusalem, and everybody wants to hear what you have to say and invite you to dinner, and people are going to sit at your feet, and you're going to say, by the way, you can get up and walk, and you can get up and walk, and you can get up and walk, and blind can see. It's going to be like massive. You're going to be rock stars. But just remember, don't do it like everybody else. Not so with you. I'm going to introduce a different paradigm for leadership. I'm going to introduce a different thought process for when you are in charge. When people are leaning into you for direction, and then consequently, because they lean into you for direction, you're going to have the potential to be massively popular. Just remember, you're not supposed to do it the way it's been modeled for you all your life. And something as simple as that has totally slipped off the radar screen for many of us in church leadership. So when you pull up to the front of the church, who has a reserved parking spot? Now, why would the pastor of a church need a reserved parking spot? What time do you get there on Sunday morning? When I come to church, I have a choice of about 2,000 parking spots. Right? Not so among you. And then you go to the typical kind of church I was brought up in, and you look up on the stage, and what do you see up on the stage? 4 thrones. The 2 larger thrones are for the pastor and the music director, and the 2 smaller thrones are for the baby bear. I mean, I don't know why they have different. Why did they build 2 different sized chairs to go on the platform? And then the really important people sit on the platform? Is that just not weird? I think that's a little bit like the Gentiles kind of did it, right? Anyway, sorry, that's a little personal. And in the church world, if we're not careful, it's all top down. There's the pastor, and he tells us what to do. We go and do that, and, he's the Lord's anointed, and, the whole thing, and he's a little bit closer to God, and he prayed and came back, and, before we know it, we're kind of in the, I'm going to come back around to that in just a second. We easily slip into this leadership paradigm that is the very thing Jesus said, okay, let's have a tender moment and a teachable moment. You guys, when you're in charge, when we launch the church, don't do it that way. Now, here's what he's not saying, because here's the other extreme that doesn't work, by the way. He's not saying there shouldn't be a leader. We're going to see that in a minute. He's not saying there shouldn't be point leadership. And one of the things that it doesn't really concern me because I don't think it's going to go anywhere. It can't go anywhere. There's a move now because, leaders have so abused leadership, people now think there shouldn't be leaders, right? It's like since I went to a bad doctor, there shouldn't be doctors. I got a bad haircut. We shouldn't have haircuts. It doesn't make any sense. But because there are leaders that abuse power, there's a movement in the church right now that's anti-leadership, and it's all a team, and everybody's going to be equal, and everybody has an equal say. And I'm just telling you, follow we doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't. You can try it. If you'd like to, you should first study other churches that have tried it. They're hard to find. They have a very short life cycle because follow we doesn't work. God has given the gift of leadership for a purpose, and Jesus isn't teaching against leadership. He's saying, okay, there's got to be leadership. You just have to think differently about it. He goes on, instead, in other words, here's the contrast, not so with you, church leaders. Instead, whoever wants to become what? Shouldn't. That's an evil thing to desire. It's not what it says, is it? He says, look, if you want to become great, that's fine. He never chastises them for wanting to be great. The two of you that kind of snuggled up with me and wanted to be ahead of the 10, hey, if you want to be great, that's not a problem. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you, in other words, it's a valid desire to want to be great, I guess, must be your what? Servant. It's okay to want to be great. Oh, good. Let me tell you how to do it. You have to be a servant. Well, I'm not so sure I want to be great then. Well, that's all right. But if you want to be great in this new paradigm of leadership, you have to be a great servant. Verse 44, then he reiterates it. This is for emphasis. Verse 44, and whoever wants to be first. Anybody here want to be first? And John's going, cross my mind. Yeah, I want to be first. He's going, great. It's okay to want to be first. Now, let me just tell you something. This is a leadership conference. One of the reasons you're a leader is because God put it in you to be a leader. And for whatever reason, now you're first. In your department, you're first. In your division, you're first. In your church, you're first. In board of elders, you're first. Somehow you got to be first. And you either wanted to be first, or maybe you didn't want to be first, but you're first because somebody has to be first. There has to be leadership for things to get done and for things to be accomplished. And Jesus says, that's fine. If you want to be great, great. I'll tell you how to be great. If you want to be first, not a problem. But let me tell you how to be first. And whoever wants to be first must be the slave of all. And then he gives us an example in case we misunderstand where this is going. Verse 45. For even the Son of Man. Now, if you have the title Son of Man, you're pretty much first. If you have the title Son of God, you're first. You're great. We're going to pause and let you go first. We're going to say, hey, what do you think we should do? I mean, he's not, arguing against somebody being first or being great. He's saying, but here's how it works when you decide to be great in my kingdom and in leading the church. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served. Now, we just got to sink in because we're going somewhere with this. Even the Son of Man did not come to be served. Okay, if the Son of Man didn't come to be served, and if the church is somehow the body of the Son of Man on earth since he has left and hasn't returned yet, if somehow when we collectively as a leadership team or as staff sit down or stand up to order and manage and arrange a church, if somehow the Son of Man did not come to be served, then I'm just thinking, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, I'm just thinking that we're not here to be served either. That's what I'm thinking. And that when I position myself either intentionally or unintentionally in my staff to be served, I have taken on a role that even the Son of Man did not take on. And in the church structure that is by nature set up so that the staff serves the senior pastor, or that the department directors, serve the division director, and that somehow we sit in our offices and we're all high and mighty and we pass things down, and it just kind of works that way, then I think, and I don't think it's intentional, I mean, nobody do this on purpose, I think we slip into a model that is not only it's not biblical, it's an insult to our Savior. For even the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to, what's the next word? Serve. And if you'd like an illustration, and to give his life a ransom for many. So Jesus says, okay, you want to be great? Yeah, I want to be great. You want to be first? I want to be first. Okay, here's how it works, all right? You position yourself as a servant of all. And if you ever wonder, how far should I take this? Just remember, even the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to be served. And here's how far he took it. He went ahead and just gave his life as a ransom for many. Still want to be first? I'm thinking I don't want to be first. How about second? I don't think I want to be that great. I want to be just a little less great than that. So here's what I want to do for a few minutes together in this session. I want us to talk about what does this look like on a church staff. Because I think this is an area where many of you left previous church staffs because of a violation of this principle, and I don't think anybody does it on purpose. Let me tell you why I think this happens. And there's exceptions to this, but I think in general, here's what happens. Every church is a system, and the system determines what decisions are made and how they're made. That when you walked into your current church, I don't care how talented and gifted and how much vision you had, you were absorbed into a system. And the system either set you up to be the kind of leader Jesus is talking about, or the system set you up to be the kind of leader that most organizations set leaders up to be. And so you begin to function in the role that's handed to you. And you have the office that's handed to you. And you got an assistant and an assistant to the assistant. Or you're the youth pastor and it's like, good luck, dude. And so you're thinking, hey, you know what? I'm going to go start my own church because that's what every youth pastor wants to do now. You're just kind of biding your time in youth ministry till you start your own church. I know how that works. So you're kind of biding your time. And unfortunately, and nobody does this on purpose. You look at how your church operates. And, when I have my church, we're going to do this. And when I have my church, we're going to do that. And when I have my church, And so you leave your current, denominational church and you start a church and this is important, and you create all kinds of different current and, relevant and irresistible kinds of ministries. But if you're not careful in terms of your approach to leadership, you carry with you a model that's really not biblical. And even though it's cool and fast and, you attract people, if you're not careful, you will adopt the same approach to leadership that every other organization adopts. And Jesus said, right up here in the front, look, guys, somebody's going to be first. Somebody's going to be in charge. Somebody's going to be the spokesman for this thing. But when you find yourself in that position, here's what I want you to think. I want you to think in terms of, how can I serve? How can I serve? How can I serve? And the further you get up the leadership ladder, and the further you get up the organizational ladder, the greater the servant you must become. Because remember, even the Son of Man, he's at the top. Even the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve. And if you want an example, to give his life a ransom for many. So in your notes, it says in Roman numeral 1, a great staff is made up of great leaders. And it's in quotes because we're talking about great the way that Jesus defined great. So we want to be great leaders, but we want to be great leaders the way that Jesus defined it. And I've given you the goal, and the goal is simply this: a staff culture characterized by mutual submission. A staff culture characterized by mutual submission. And this is important. That means not everybody is equal on the org chart, but everybody is mutually submissive to everybody on the org chart. Not everybody is in the same place. This isn't about flatlining it and saying everybody has equal vote, everybody has equal authority, everybody is equal. No. That doesn't work and it doesn't replicate. So the good news is churches that try that, they just don't work and they go away. So that they don't really model anything because they're not around. This isn't about flatlining the organizational chart. This is about having leaders, having people in charge, having people of responsibility, but understanding that within the culture of the organization, it is saturated by the sense of mutual submission. It's the same thing in marriage. The husband is the head of the home. But that whole passage in Ephesians begins by, you submit to one another. So I'm the head of the home, but I mutually submit to my wife and she submits to me. But at the end of the day, the buck falls on my shoulders. We're not equal like this in terms of who's carrying the responsibility. I'm ultimately responsible. My responsibility as the head of the home, this is what Ephesians teaches, is to lay down my life for my family. But while I'm responsible for laying down my life for my family, I am also called to mutually submit to my kids and to my wife. And those are not opposites. When you combine those two things, you have a powerful, powerful dynamic. And it is a mistake to go to one extreme that says, because I'm large and in charge, everything's top down. It's also a mistake to go to the extreme to say, no, we're all equal in God's sight. You may be all equal in God's sight, you're not going to get anything done. But try it. Just try it. I could be wrong about it. So the goal is mutual submission, and the question is this: what can I do to help? What can I do to help? I want you to say that with me. What can I do to help? One more time. What can I do to help? One more time. What if that question permeated your organization? See, in my family, I want my kids to say, Dad, what can I do to help? But as the dad who's in charge, sometimes I got to walk into the room and say, hey, son, what can I do to help? Because this isn't about being equal. It's about being equally submitted to one another, while each of us carries the responsibility God has placed on our shoulders. And for some of you, God has placed huge responsibility on your shoulders. You're in charge of a huge, student ministry or a denomination or a church. But here's the deal. The higher you go organizationally, don't miss this, the harder you have to work to be mutually submissive. Because the higher you go up in the organization, the less inclined people are to see you as someone who has submitted themselves to them. Now, if somebody's below you, you don't have to have a conversation about, well, you're submitted to me. They look at the org chart and see that. But when you're high and mighty on the org chart, you have to be intentional about learning how and figuring out how to submit. And I'm telling you, you take point leadership as is modeled in the Scripture, and you marry that with mutual submission, and you've got yourself one healthy, dynamic staff culture. But you ignore either of those, and you've got dysfunction. On one end, a lot gets done, but there is a wake of dead bodies behind, On the other extreme, everybody loves everybody. We love. We don't get a thing done, but we love. We are mutually submissive. We have 12 people, and that's all we want. It's great, great commission. That's somebody else's responsibility. We're just being missional, or something. Anyway, sorry, okay. All right, so what I want to do for the next few minutes, I pick on missional because I don't know what that means, I don't think. And it's always like a trick question when people, because every once in a while some 25-year-old kid, says, is North Point missional? And I'm like, that's a trap. Whatever I say, I think there's something coming. In the old days, it was this. Is this a Spirit-anointed church? That's what people used to ask. Is this a Spirit-anointed church? I'm like, that's a code, isn't it? How do I look at somebody and say, no, not really. We ignore the Spirit here. I mean, you can't say that. But if you say yes, then they want me to speak in tongues. It's a trap. And so sometimes, are you a missional? I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, because I'm too old to know what that means. Or, I don't know. Or are you incarnational? I'm a Taurus. I don't know. I'm incarnational. I don't know. Okay. That's just a generational thing. No offense to everybody with an earring and a youth group, okay? So we're good. We're good. Honestly, I'm good. It's good. Okay, so I got to get through this. Okay, here's some stuff we've done. Here's some best practices. This isn't the only way. I'm not even suggesting you go home and do any of this, but here are some practical nuts and bolts ways that we have tried to create a staff where there's mutual submission, even though there's point leadership in departments and we want great leaders. Roman numeral 2, letter A, do for one when you can't do for all. Do for one when you can't do for all. This is huge. Do for one when you can't do for all. How many times did you hear growing up, well, if I let you go, I have to let everybody go. And you used to think, well, no, you don't. Just don't tell them you let me go. I'm going to tell if you won't tell, And you do that with your kids. And so here's what we do in leadership. Here's what we do. Well, I can't visit everybody in the hospital, so I'm not going to visit anybody in the hospital. I can't get everybody a new computer, so I can't get you a new computer. I can't go to everybody's wedding, so I'm not going to go to any weddings. I can't do for all, so I'm not going to do for one. I'm telling you, you just need to break that way of thinking and throw it away. Incarnational in the proper sense and what we're talking about here, servant leadership is, I know I can't do for all, but when I can do for one, I'm going to do for one. Now, as the senior pastor, there are a gazillion things I can't do for everybody. In fact, the joke is here, you don't really want Andy to show up at the hospital because that means it's worse than what they told you. True. I had an elder. I showed up and he went, oh, that's what he said. He was Ray Douglas. He said, oh, it's worse than what they said. I said, no, I'm here as your friend. I'm not here as the pastor. I just heard you're in the hospital. Okay. So the temptation, come on, listen. The temptation is the higher up in the organization you go, the more excuses you have not to do anything for anyone since you can't do something for everyone. You need to refuse to buy into that. And you need to do for one when you can't do for everyone. I'm going to talk in a minute about this evaluation we do. But one of the things I get a 3-month evaluation from all our new staff, and I have a bunch of questions. We're trying to learn how to be a better organization. And so one of the questions is, do you have all the tools you need to do your job? Do you have all the tools you need to do your job? And people say, well, it'd be nice to have a laptop, and, it'd be nice to have it'd be nice to have that. And so, but I can't buy everybody a laptop. I can't go out and buy everything everybody wants. But when I get one of those and I can do something, then I just break all the rules and go do that. And the illustration I use all the time is one of these I got was from one of our staff members at Buckhead Church. And the question was, do you have all the equipment you need to do your job? And she said, well, one thing, it'd be great if we had a paper cutter like the one at the North Point offices. Like, I have no idea what that means. I don't use a paper cutter. So I went to Diane. I said, what's she talking about? She said, we got this big old fancy, thing, paper cutter, and the one at Buckhead Church isn't quite as good. I said, well, go buy one of those. We're not going to go down through the red tape. I said, just find out just go buy a paper cutter. So Diane bought a paper cutter, put a little gift bag. Next time we had an all-staff meeting, I didn't even know who she was, honestly, and if she's here, I apologize. I said, Diane, is she here? Which one? I don't know. I don't know all our staff very well. She's just over there in the corner. So I walked over there with a bag. I said, here's your paper cutter. She looked at me. I said, you said this would help, so here's your paper cutter. Now, can I get everything for everybody they need? No. But when you can do for one, when you can't do for all, you do for one. And when I talk to pastors, they say, "What about do you greet people?" And I'm going, "No, you can't greet everybody, but you find a way to greet somebody." And you know what this is? One day I'll develop a whole talk on this. This is called symbolic leadership. Symbolic leadership is, here's the deal: I'm going to do for one what I wish I could do for all. I'm going to do for one what I would do for all if I could do for all. But I'm not going to use the excuse, since I can't do it for everybody, I'm not going to do it for somebody. So one of the ways that you serve down, and that even though you're on top of your division or department, is you look for opportunities to do the unexpected thing. And let me just say this too, and I don't have time to explain this. Don't try to be fair. Fairness is the enemy of rightness. Okay? You try to be fair. That's why you don't do anything sometimes. You go, well, I got to be fair. Listen, fairness is not a biblical value. Fairness ended in the Garden of Eden. After the Garden of Eden, nothing has ever been fair since, has it? Why do we try to be fair? It's not a biblical value. Do the right thing. And people say, that's not fair. Just say, well, you know what? Fairness ended in the Garden of Eden. Just tell them that. They don't have any idea what you're talking about, but they'll... Wow, is that in the Bible? No, I heard somebody say that. Okay, so my kids, I know, Dad, fairness ended in the Garden of Eden. I know. As a parent, I'm not trying to be fair. I'm trying to do what's right for my firstborn, my thirdborn, my second. You just try to do the right thing. So one of the ways that you serve down, and one of the ways that as you get pushed to the top, is you've got to learn, make it a habit to do for one, even when you can't do for all. All right, letter B. Systematize top-down service. Now, this takes a little explanation. Systematize top-down service. Random acts of kindness are not enough in leadership. Okay? Me bringing the paper cutter, that was a random act of kindness. That was not a system. What we've got to do is we've got to learn to systematize top-down service. That as you think about the people that positionally in the staff or as a volunteer serve you naturally because of where they are in the organization chart, you have got to systematize top-down service to them. Because if you don't systematize it, if you don't build it into the rhythm of your organization, you'll never serve them. Every once in a while, you'll remember a birthday. That's not a system. So you've got to ask the question, well, how can I build into the rhythm of our organization a way to serve people because it's mutual submission even though there's point leadership? I wrote a couple of things down here. One of the things that we do is we do a 3-month and a 12-month evaluation of our organization by new employees, which means when I meet with new employees, I say, you're going to get an email from my office on 3 months and 12 months. You don't have to remember this. We're just going to send it out. This is your opportunity to evaluate this organization. This is not an employee evaluation. This is you answering questions to tell us what kind of organization we are. You have fresh eyes. I've worked here for 13 years. I don't even see our problems anymore. I live in the woods. I don't see any trees. You're brand new. Things that don't bother me, that should bother me, they're going to bother you. You've only been here 3 months. You've only been here a year. So we send them this email, and they evaluate the organization. And they answer questions like, do you see anything that we're doing that's off mission? Do you see anything that we're doing off purpose? Is there anything that frustrates you? Do you have a best friend at work? Do you have all the things you need to do? Are you doing what you were hired to do? How long did it take you? We have all these questions, and they can say anything they want to evaluate the organization. Now, why is that important? Because here's what I'm saying. I'm saying, you know what? I want to create a great organization for you to work in. And if we're doing something that makes your job unnecessarily difficult, and if we're creating an organization that makes it difficult for you to enjoy your job, I want you to tell me, and I'm going to fix it because I'm going to serve you. And you may not be a direct report from me. You may be at a different campus. But I want that information, and it's a system. Every 3 months, every year, every 3 months, at the 1-year mark for all of our new employees. It's just one example of how to systematize mutual submission. I'm here for you. You're not just here for me. The other thing that we do is, and some of you do this in a different way, and probably maybe even better, we have a system of staff coaches. And when I say to all our employees, look, I don't want you to be frustrated. I've worked on 2 church staffs where I was frustrated all the time. I go home and tell the same story to Sandra 8 times. She finally look at me and go, honey, I can't help you. You know, you already told me, I know. And then she said, you heard, I know. You're telling the same stories. That might be insanity. I can't fix it. So I bring all this frustration home. And so, you know what? And some of you have worked in systems like that. Listen, as the leader, address that. Let me ask you, do you want the people who work for you going home every day frustrated about the organization you've created? The answer is no. Then come up with a way in your system to address that. That's a way to serve the people. That's mutual submission. Listen, you don't have to do that. They do have to serve you by working for you. So you've got to be intentional and come up with ways. So what we did is I picked, about a half dozen, or now it's about a dozen, of the most mature people on our staff. And I said, you're going to be a staff coach. We did very little training, and essentially here's what a staff coach does. If you work for our organization and you're frustrated about anything, it could be the person that works for you. It could be you're frustrated with your boss. You're frustrated because you think somebody's stealing from the company. You're frustrated because you're not doing what you were hired to do. It's just any frustration that you find yourself going home every day going, here's what you do. You go talk to a staff coach. The conversation is going to be confidential. They're at all 3 campuses. They're every single department. You can just go sit down with a staff coach and you can just vent. Because I want you to vent to somebody that can help you, not your husband, your wife, kick the dog, or tell somebody in the next cube over and, start a, dissension in the organization. You go to a staff coach, and the coach is going to help you. They're going to walk you through conflict resolution. You're going to come to another staff coach and say, hey, let's fix this. They're going to coach you about how to talk to somebody. They may say, you know what, here's some information you didn't have, and you'll go, oh, I didn't know that. Well, now problem solved. So why? Because I don't want people that work for me frustrated about things we can fix organizationally. You need a way in the system of your organization to address frustrations. Imagine how much happier you would have been at your previous church if there had been a legitimate way to vent your frustration instead of just gossiping or going home or finally just getting fed up and quit. See, that's a way, systematically, we've created a way for mutual submission. Again, that may not be something you need to do, but as a leader, I'm telling you as a leader, you got to be intentional, and you've got to systematize it. Random acts of kindness, random acts of service are great, but they're just not enough. Letter C. In response to your staff's key objectives, get in the habit of asking, how can I help? That's the blank there, how can I help? In response to your staff's key objectives, ask, how can I help? And this is something that does not come naturally for me, I got to tell you. That's why I had to systematize it. So earlier this year, I have 3 direct reports, including my assistant. And then we have a leadership team made up of 10 people. Now, these 10 people are not all direct reports to me, but they play key roles in this organization. So they come in, and we do this little deal where each of them presents their objectives and their goals for the year. And here's what I'm going to do. Here's what we're going to do in student ministry. Here's what we're trying to do in children's ministry. And we're developing a new curriculum. Here's what we're doing overseas, and we want to create a conference overseas. And so they explain all these objectives. And then I ask them this question. I say, now I want you to go back, and I want you to write down one critical thing I could do to help you accomplish your objectives. Now, you can't give me 5, but what in the area of a Global X, our overseas mission, come back and tell me, Andy, if I could have this much of your time and this much of your focus, here's what you could do to really help me move the ball down the court. In student ministry, Andy, if you would come in and help us reevaluate curriculum because you're great at helping us find bottom lines, if you'd give us this much time to help us rethink the bottom lines for this year's student curriculum, that would be great. So I ask each one of my direct reports, and even in this broader circle of leadership team, I'm asking you, you work for me, but I'm asking you, how can I help? You know what my gifts and skills are. How can I drop into your area and work for you for a day or an afternoon or for a week? What can I do to help? See, I don't have to do that. But you know what? It's mutual submission. I'm the boss, but I'm to submit myself to the people on this staff. And if I don't do that, I'm going to lead like the Gentiles. And the point isn't to flatten the organization. The point is to create mutual submission within the organization. So my assignments this year, I'm working with partnerships. I'm going to help raise some money for some of our partnerships. Got it for our groups, for our groups division. Bill says, you know what? I need 2 sermons a year out of you. I need 2 group sermons a year. That's what you want to serve me. I need 2 times a year when you stand up on the platform and you preach your heart out about groups. Okay, if that's what I can do to serve you, that's what I'll do. So in response to your staff's key objectives, in other words, instead of just getting their goals and outlines and going, all right, I'm going to hold you accountable. I mean, you got to do that too. You got to do that too. But you ask, okay, those are great goals. What can I do to help you? Letter D. Create and maintain a sustainable pace. Create and maintain a sustainable pace. Let me tell you why this is very important. I think this is in your notes, actually. Without margin, that's the blank there. Without margin, there's no room to serve. Without margin, you don't have time to serve each other. In my notes, I wrote this. When I'm under pressure, I become very self-centered. Don't you? When I'm under pressure, it's like, no, I gotta, When I'm under pressure, I can't serve you. I'm under pressure. If your organization runs at a pace that's not sustainable, you can talk about this all day long. Nobody's going to do it. Because a lack of margin means a lack of mutual submission. Because when I'm in pain, I'm very self-centered. And when I'm stressed out, I'm very self-centered. And when I've got too much to do, I'm very self-centered. So don't come here and talk to me about serving you. I'm busy. So listen. So as the boss, one of the best things I can do for our organization, one of the best, points of service that I can give to our organization is to make sure that we're running at a sustainable pace. Because if I don't help our organization create a sustainable pace, we're not going to serve each other because we're just going to be too busy. In fact, interesting illustration. In 2007, last year, we didn't have a drive conference. And here's why. Because in 2007, we were scheduled to open a brand new building in Buckhead and our brand new campus at Brownsbridge. And we're looking at 2007. This is in 2006. And we're looking at opening these 2 campuses and then doing the Drive conference. And I said, you know what? We're not doing Drive. The first reaction of some of our hard-charging, type A personality staff, who I just love because, oh my gosh, did they get the work done, was, but wait. We've done it 2 years. If we stop, we're going to lose momentum. If we stop and all their concerns were exactly right. But as I stood back and looked at the whole pace of the staff, I said, you know what? If we open 2 campuses and do Drive, we're going to kill our staff. I don't care if we lose momentum. We'll just start over. We're not doing Drive in 2007. And everybody went, wait. All right, thanks, Mom. No, I'm just kidding. It's not my mom. That's probably Kendra back there. No, I'm just kidding, Kendra. You know what? Listen, and it's not like I had to talk everybody into it. I'm probably taking too much credit for this decision. This was a discussion. But when we as a staff team decided not to do Drive, I could almost hear a sigh of relief throughout the organization. Oh. Now, I could have got up and said, do you love Jesus? I love Jesus. Doesn't the church in America need better leadership? I could have given a pep talk, and by God's grace, God's going to give us the strength to open 2 campuses and do Drive, and you're the best staff in the world. Everybody going like this, and then going, oh, well, that's easy for him to say. He's probably just going to go drive home and, go swimming, and we're all going to be out here, going, he didn't do any of the work anyway. We never even see him, Just kidding. That's not true. So, we canned the conference for a year. Why? Because I'm telling you, this is a marathon. This is a marathon. I want people to have margin, because if they have margin, guess what they do? They serve one another. And as the leader, the way to serve your organization is to make sure you have a sustainable pace. The second bullet point there is this: without margin, we seek our kingdom first. Without margin, we seek first, our kingdom. That's because under pressure, we tend to get very self-centered. By the way, my clock has disappeared, which is a really dangerous thing, so it needs to reappear or we'll be here throughout the evening. Okay, just kidding. Letter E. Celebrate and reward greatness when you see it. Celebrate and reward greatness when you see it. Celebrate and reward greatness when you see it. And by greatness, what am I talking about? I'm talking about greatness the way Jesus defined it, which means When you see amongst your staff mutual submission, when you see people from Department A serving Department B, don't go, boy, that was really neat. You got to, stop the presses and let's draw attention to that. When you catch people mutually submitting to one another, you've got to stop and celebrate that. And here's why, and I wrote this in your notes, I believe. This is like one of the most important leadership phrases in the world. I got this from the Leadership Challenge. It was written in 1987, best leadership book I ever read, maybe because it was the first one. And the author has this statement in there, and it's simply this: what's rewarded is repeated. What's rewarded is repeated. What's rewarded is repeated. So if you want mutual submission repeated in your organization, what do you have to do? You've got to reward it, not just go, oh, neat email, trash, got to get going, Oh, that's a cool story. No. And so in our staff meetings, and you've probably heard me say this before, on Monday mornings, we have, about 150, or I don't know how many, we have like 80 or 90 from this campus. Then once a month, we have all the campuses together. And I start our Monday morning meetings by saying this: hey, what happened yesterday? That would be Sunday. Or what happened this past week that made you feel like you were successful in what you came here to do? What happened last week that made you feel like you were successful leading people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ? And then everybody stands up and tells stories. And what's so cool, about half the stories are about how one department served the other department. I just want to say thank you for facilities, because we changed our deal at the last minute. Facilities came in and they served us. Thank you, facilities. I just want to thank groups because they helped us transition the deal. I just want to thank Donnie because he wrote a sketch. And in other words, and you know what they're doing? They're thanking each other, and that is a celebration of mutual submission, that we're all not working in our little silos and we're in music. We don't do children, we're in music, or, however it works in your church, and that's our PA system. You didn't sign it out and get it, and last time you borrowed it, I lived in that world, where this is our equipment, and you own everything 4 times because nobody wants to share, Jesus is going, well, that's neato, So anyway, the point being, you've got to create the opportunity for mutual submission. Okay, you got the point. And what's rewarded is repeated. The other thing that we do that is kind of cool is about once every 6 weeks or so, when our staff comes into our staff meeting, we have a pile of stationery and envelopes on their tables. And we begin the staff meeting by everybody writing a thank you note to someone. We're just going to take 10 minutes. It could be somebody on staff. It could be a key volunteer. I want you to think about somebody who served you yesterday, Sunday. And right now, I want you to write them a thank you note. See, that's not random. That's building it into the rhythm and the system of your organization. We're all going to write a thank you note together. So everybody's going, okay, yeah, I'm busy. I got to go. Yeah, but who served me yesterday? I'm going to write thank you notes. Suddenly, sometimes they show up on people's desks. Sometimes it gets mailed outside the organization. But let's reward submission. Let's serve one another. Let's reward greatness, because when you serve and you don't have to, that's great. And when you're in charge and you submit yourself by serving people you don't have to serve, that's greatness. And if you don't reward it, it won't be repeated. And then letter F, and this is primarily for senior pastors and youth pastors, okay? Confront your ego. Confront your ego. I say youth pastors because you all want to be pastors someday, and that's fine, and you should, and God's training you with those students, and I'm all for that. Confront your ego. Number one, what's more important? What's most important? And look, you can't answer this here. And I guarantee you, the people that work with you and for you, they know the answer to this next question. What's most important, creating a great organization or creating a name for yourself? You got to answer that question. What's most important? Creating a great organization or creating a name for yourself? That's a big question. What's most important? Do you want to create a great organization or do you want to create a name for yourself? Now, you know what? You may create a great organization and you end up having a name for yourself, and people know you because of your organization, but that's different than using your organization and using your staff to create a name for yourself. Here's what I wrote in my notes. Don't try to write this down. If you want to create a great organization, you'll have to serve. If you want to create a name for yourself, you'll be content being served. It's that simple. I don't think this is in your notes. If you see your staff, is this in your notes? If you see your staff, okay, listen to this. If you see your staff, this sounds like a joke, but I'm serious. This is a big deal. If you see your staff as a supporting cast for your career, announce that at staff meeting next week. Just tell them, I don't know how long I'll be here because this is a small town and I'm a big town guy. But I just want you to know I've gathered you here and pay you minimum wage because I'm hoping that if you'll do your job, it'll push me up to the surface and, First Baptist big time will come and hire me away. Just tell them that you see them as the supporting. Okay, you go, oh, well, I don't know. But come on. If that's in your heart, in other words, can I just get, since we're leaders and let's keep this in the room. If you look at me and go, that's what I want to be one day, you have a problem, okay? If you look at any individual and go, that's what I'm setting my sights on, you have work to do. It will be very difficult for you to ever be a great leader. You may accomplish some great things, but great leaders don't set their sight on personalities that they want to emulate. Great leaders dig into where God put them and said, you know what? I am going to serve the heck out of these people. And I don't care how, I know you want to clap, but we'll clap in a minute. I appreciate it. And I would have clapped too, probably. But I want to create an organization to where when people walk in this organization, they go, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. I get this question all the time, where do you get your people? Nordstrom? No, I don't like you go out and say, okay, we'll take that one, and now I'll take that one. You don't get your people. Leaders don't get people. You know what they do? They attract people. And you know what? Let me tell you, the sharpest, smartest people can sniff out an ego 2 miles away, and they do not want to be a part of that. In fact, we have incredibly talented people leave the marketplace and come work here because they already been there and done that, and they realize, you know what, I am working 60 hours a week for somebody's ego. Don't want to do that. Now, some people are content to do that, and that's fine, but great people aren't. Great people want to be a part of a great organization. And you know what? As church leaders who are part of the body of Christ, I think that's our calling. Because Jesus said, you want to be great? You want to be first? Great. You become the servant of all. You may be at the top of the heap. You may be the president, the vice president. You may be the leader of your denomination. You may have all kinds of positional leadership. But the higher you go, the more intentional you get about serving the people who come to work to serve you. And in order to do that, at some point, you got to look in the mirror and ask the question, what am I doing this for? Am I trying to create a name for myself? Or am I trying to create a great organization? Roman numeral 3. Is that where we are in your notes? Letter A. Are signs that things aren't so, quote, great. Competition between departments. Competition between departments. I'll never forget about 9 years ago, and I asked permission to tell this story. And this is great. In our 3-month evaluation, there's a guy on our staff named Jason Hodges. And Jason had been here 3 months, so we sent him his evaluation of the organization. He was young leader, great guy. And in fact, much of what you've seen today, he has had his hands all over that. And so there was at the end, there was place for just random questions. And here was Jason's question, I'll never forget. Now, at the time, he worked for the family ministry. And his question was, I only have one question, why aren't we supposed to like the service programming division? In other words, Andy, I showed up at work and I realized we're in a feud. But I'm not sure why we're shooting at him, but I just shoot because I work in the family ministry and we were told that you just shoot at the service programming division and they're shooting back at us, but nobody's explained this feud to me. Why aren't we supposed to like the people in the service programming division? Now see, I wouldn't have gotten that information that specific other than this little evaluation. He just wanted to know, if I'm going to shoot at people, just tell me why. Andy, maybe you can help me with this. Now, I had sensed some tension between those departments, but now I had some ammunition. So I called Reggie Joyner, who was our family minister at the time, who's gone on to do Orange and great things, and Reggie and I are great friends and created so much of what you experienced. And I called in Julie Arnold. She was in charge of service programming division. So I had a family minister in the service programming division. I said, I just want to read y'all something. It's kind of neat. We have an employee that's been here for 3 months, and here's what he's picked up on. You guys don't get along. And there's something going on between your departments. I said, now, we're not going to have a discussion. Here's what this is like. This is like I'm driving down the road, and I got 2 kids in the back seat, and they're fighting. I don't really care what they're fighting about. I just want it to stop. So I'm going to leave the room, and you guys work this out, because this has got to go away. And they kind of, you're right. And you know what? It went away. It just went away. They figured it out. They're smart. If you have conflict between divisions in your church, that means, newsflash, they're not serving one another. And they're not loving one another. They're killing one another. And if you're the leader, it is your responsibility to figure it out. And if you say, well, Martha, she's just cantankerous, fire Martha, okay? Or sit down with Martha and say, Martha, can you be less cantankerous? And if she gets, well, they, you might have to just say, well, you know, here's, you know, I'll pay you for 6 months, but you got, you know, we can't have that. It's infectious. It's like a poison, okay? If there's competition, and I don't mean, there can be healthy, you know, stuff, but I mean if it's just that negative territorial silo, or that's not our responsibility, you got work to do. The people aren't serving one another. And it may be because you created a system that created it, or it may be personalities, or, you know, you got to figure that out. Letter B, double standards. Double standards. That is, there's the pastor, and then there's everyone else. There's the men, there's the women. Double standards. Letter C, loyalty lectures. Signs that things aren't so great. If you give a lecture about loyalty, the game is over. You just don't know it, okay? Let me just share this and we're going to close. The greatest value is not loyalty. What is it? There's faith, hope, and the greatest of these is that loyalty isn't even in the top 3. There's faith, there's hope, and there's love. And if you as a leader are into this, well, you know, you got to be loyal to the pastor, you don't get it. Peter betrayed Jesus in front of Jesus, and Jesus said, you know what, I'm going to put you in charge of the whole church. You're the cornerstone. You would have fired Peter. You would have had, you had told bad stories about Peter. Jesus put him in charge. I mean, the popes related to Peter. The one guy, Jesus said, Satan. Well, I mean, you know, in Catholic theology, that's the whole deal, right? And you know, Jesus said to Peter, Peter, you know, you're like Satan, get behind me. And oh yeah, you betrayed me in front of, you know, this teenage girl, intimidated you. I think I'll put you in charge. I mean, what's that about? I'm just telling you. If you give loyalty lectures, I mean, I've talked to people, to staff so many times they came on staff with the church, and you know, the thing was, okay, we're going to hire you, but, you know, do you understand that ultimately your first loyalty is to the pastor? I said, you do not want to work there. There is a man or woman who doesn't understand leadership. If you have to require loyalty, it is already over. You don't know it. You win loyalty. You deserve loyalty. You don't require loyalty, okay, in an organization. Now, that doesn't mean you should, you know, people can go around and gossip and stab you in the back. No, I'm just saying, if that has to be a big conversation piece, and then the last thing in my notes is that whole God's anointed thing, you know, whatever God's anointed, what's the phrase? Yeah, don't touch God's anointed. Okay, just in the story, who was that referring to? Who was God's anointed? Saul. So what you're telling me is you're Saul? No, I'm David. No, David, no. In the story, it's Saul. God's anointed Saul. So you want to be Saul. Does that make me David? No, I'm David. You're Absalom. And anyway, it's... Just give me a minute. I'll figure this out, okay? But all I know is it says, don't touch God's anointed. That has nothing to do with the pastor of a church. It was about a bad king using the bathroom in a cave. That's what this story's about, right? So... I know I'm kind of hitting hard on that. All I'm saying is this, Pastor, I'm just trying to break through to a mindset that senior pastors, I don't know where we get it from, a system that we were brought up in and adopted. There's the pastor, and we know churches where they have the pastor's picture in every classroom so the kids will know who the pastor is. Honestly, okay? You know, he's got his name on the sign, and his picture's all over the website. And it's like, why don't you put the other staff on the website? Oh, why is the pastor? What? Well, because, there's no good because. You're the chief servant. You got the most extraordinary leadership gift in your organization, maybe. That makes you the most extraordinarily responsible servant in the organization. You know, and I don't get this right every time, believe me. Believe me. Just ask the people who work here. But you know what? I'm committed to it. Because Jesus said, you want to be a great leader? That's how you be a great leader. You spend your life saying, what can I do to help? 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 And you know what, leaders? If you say, what can I do to help? 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 Guess what your staff starts doing? What can I do to help? What can I do to help? What can I do to help? And all of a sudden, the silos, they just kind of go away. And all of a sudden, there's I get to tap into your gifts, and you get to tap into mine, and your leadership, and all of a sudden, there's this thing. And it's not because you do away with point leadership, it's that you combine point leadership with mutual submission, and it is a powerful, powerful, powerful thing. And so in the conclusion, it just says the question, what can I do to help? Here's what I wrote in my notes, and we'll be done and go do something fun. I wrote this. This was, I guess, kind of for me. In eternity past, our Heavenly Father looked at this sin-saturated planet and asked, what can I do to help? And He sent His Son to die for you and for me. Even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give His life a ransom for many. Not so, Jesus said, among you. If you want to be great, you be the servant. If you want to be first, you figure out how to be last. And I think in our world, the way to bring that into organization is to make kind of the echo throughout the hallways, starting with us as leaders. What can I do to help? 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 I'm not flattening the organization. I'm taking the powerful dynamic of point visionary leadership, and I'm going to marry it with the power of humility and submission. And when you do that in your organization, you will have a culture that rocks. You'll have a culture that's so productive, and people will be amongst your people going, what is it? How did you do that? And maybe, God will use our organizational leadership as a tool of evangelism to reach a world that's trying to figure all of this out. What can I do to help? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we can't really argue with the Scripture, but gosh, what do we do with this? And I just pray again, as we did this whole day, as we've just taken in so much information, give us wisdom to know what to do with what we've heard. Give us the courage to do it. And Lord, I pray that our church organizations, our denominations, our parachurch ministries, our student ministries, our church staffs would just become saturated with humility and strong leadership at the same time. Thank you for stopping the disciples in their tracks and saying, not so with you. Father, our prayer is not so with us. That we would be leaders worth following because we become great the way that you defined great. And we pray all of this, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen.